Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Stefan Burns. I'm your host. Today we're going to be talking about the crazy solar activity that is occurring right now. Here we have our 304 angstrom view of the sun, and we'll see a massive plasma filament blast off from the far side right about here. Probably one of the largest that I've ever seen. Check this out. Oh, boom, shakalaka. This is insane. You don't often see plasma filaments that big get launched off. This is showing that there's a lot of activity on the far side of the sun. All those sunspots are rotating towards Earth facing in direct very soon. The sun has a 28-day rotation, so it's not going to take that long for it to reach us. And well, we also have stuff happening on the Earth-facing side of the sun. We have this massive black scar on the front of the sun directly facing Earth. This is a coronal hole with a quite unusual shape. So we also see one right there at the end of this video. We'll talk about that one specific, but both of these, you notice, are aligned with the equator of the sun. And that is special because that means that we're going to get hit by those high-speed streams of solar wind which emanate from these, because these are areas where the magnetic field of the sun extends deep out into space that connects to the Earth. And what happens is you get this energetic connection between the sun and the Earth. This can also happen for Mercury, for Venus, for Mars, even for the outer planets like Jupiter. Starts to get a little bit more nebulous once you go further out because of how the solar wind spirals out. But the Earth at 1 astronomical unit connects to these very readily. The Earth is also very geologically alive, right? Mars is quite dead compared to the Earth. It still has some activity, but not like the Earth. Venus doesn't have a magnetic field. We don't know what's happening with Venus in terms of like plate tectonics and such, but we believe that it's a simpler geologic system. Same with Mercury. Earth is quite complex, has a magnetic field. It's like very active and alive and nuanced, and well, this magnetic field emanating from this dark scar connects to the Earth, hits Earth with a high velocity burst of solar wind, and that is very well connected to high magnitude earthquake activity here on Earth. So I'm not talking magnitude 3s, magnitude 4s, magnitude 5s. I'm talking magnitude 6 earthquakes, even magnitude 7, magnitude 8 earthquakes, even up to magnitude 9. We see a clear connection in time with the highest magnitude earthquakes on Earth with these coronal holes. They're called coronal holes because you have the outermost atmosphere of the sun known as the corona. It's this very high temperature plasma, millions of degrees Kelvin. When it's a low density, and therefore also a low temperature, it shows up dark on this specific wavelength of light view, the 193 angstrom view. We also look at the 211, there's a variety of others. So that's why it shows up like this. So this is a very interesting, weird, unusual feature on the sun. And these coronal holes connect to Earth, like I said, and that seems to cause earthquakes. So now we are in officially an earthquake watch. I issue these on the channel. We do a variety of space weather and Earth geophysical forecasting here. And there's a pretty good track record of when we go geoeffective with these and the solar wind density drops, the solar wind velocity goes up. There's kind of like key thresholds there. When we hit them, after that geoeffective connection, that's when we start to get bursts of earthquake activity because they're not regular. There's this clustering of earthquake activity. It's non-homogeneous. So it's not just perfectly regular every single day till the end of time. There's variability to it, and it matches up with solar activity. We'll look at some other data there too, very basic data that clearly illustrates that point. But what we have happening on the sun right now on the far side is absolutely insane. And I was wondering whether to do this live stream or not today, talking about the coronal hole and the earthquake connection. I've talked about it before, but we have a new earthquake watch in effect. And then I saw these plasma filament eruptions, and I knew I had to go live right now because that is absolutely beyond belief. I mean, I was like almost fell back in my chair when I saw that. And I watch this stuff all the time. So you know that if I'm shocked and, you know, kind of blown away by that, then that's something pretty wild. So that is also an energetic influence for our solar system, though it's going out the other direction. Interesting to note is that we have a conjunction cycle right now playing out between Venus and Mars, soon to go conjunct together on the far side of the sun, perfectly aligned with the sun. So they're both doing their superior conjunctions simultaneously on the far side, and that occurs once every 2,338 days or so. So it's a regular planetary synodic cycle. This time we also have Jupiter on the opposite side. That goes exact the beginning of January. So we do have planetary influences right now on the other side, and then we see that happen. Very interesting. This will rotate eventually. All this activity will rotate towards Earth facing. If you go back here, you'll notice that we have some very bright regions rotating into view. So there is a very large sunspot that'll be rotating into view over the next couple days onto the eastern limb. This is solar coordinate system, and then that will take 14 days to track across. There's also some even bigger sunspots on the far side that will take longer to arrive. They're going to be lining up to be Earth facing with also Jupiter behind us when we have that Mars-Venus cazimi. Let me show you that in action because this is really quite remarkable. It's incredible to see this play out. We get these every about 6.7 years or so, 6.6, 6.7 years. And sometimes other planets will participate in them as well. So here we can see our coronagraph view. And this is one day that we're looking at. Maybe it's actually even a little bit less than a day. So we only have about 5 hours of data here. And it's about 24 hours out of date actually. So but we're not really interested in that. We're more interested in Venus here. And you see Mars right there. So Mars shows up quite dim compared to Venus. Doesn't have a bright atmosphere. It's also much further away from the sun, but both are on the far side right now. Mars being ahead of the sun, you'll see the background stars here. You see how they're moving, right? Oh, the planets and the sun are all moving like this. That's due to us actually rotating around the sun, but we keep the sun fixed in position, showing therefore the sky going like this. Mars has a slower orbital velocity than the Earth. So what happens is that the sun catches up to Mars from this perspective, whereas Venus is faster. So then she zooms on ahead. So they're going to have this convergence. Can I do this? This is difficult. We're going to have this convergence like this simultaneously at the center of the sun on January, I think it's precisely January 7th. But the whole time frame of like January 6th to the 9th is effectively when this is happening. This is a very unique planetary geometry that we have not seen since 1936. And then before that, it goes back hundreds of years. I actually really couldn't find a good example of this unique planetary geometry in hundreds of years. We have our real-time solar wind. Let's look at that and show you kind of what we're looking at here for this coronal hole high-speed stream impact. We see our past 7 days of data right here, and you'll see our 2 recent high-speed stream impacts. So there was like a little bit of this coronal hole that was kind of reaching over. It looked like a scorpion tail a few days ago that gave us this increase here back on the 13th to 14th of December. And you see that our velocity went up to 700 kilometers per second. So high 600s and just tapping 700 a couple times to some of these measurements if you zoom in. Then it went down here to about 450 kilometers per second. Now you see it's been ramping up again. And we see again, it ramped up to 700. That's a high-speed stream impact. And then we see it going down. What's interesting though is that our density has actually been remaining low. So these haven't been super dense high-speed stream impacts. So we're actually still waiting on the main high-speed stream impact from that coronal hole. That's expected to come in within the next 24 hours or so once it's in that geo-effective position. But we have already been buffeted by some high velocity solar wind, and the solar wind density has already been low. So the fact that we haven't had significant earthquake activity over the past few days, and this has been happening, suggests to me that when it does come in, when we do get some earthquakes, they're probably going to be larger than they would have been otherwise, because there is an energy loading effect to these coronal hole high-speed streams. And I can show you a graphic I created illustrating these coronal hole high-speed streams and how they connect to Earth very nicely. So here that is. We see this coronal hole on the sun. There's our sun. There's its rotation like this, right? Here we see the orbit of the Earth, and we see the direction this high-speed stream is moving. There's usually a high-density wall of plasma in front of the low-density, high-velocity solar wind that emanates from this coronal hole. And so what happens is you get this dense shock that hits the Earth, and then all of a sudden it really comes in fast. And so there's a lot of structure to the solar wind. It's not homogeneous. Most things are not homogeneous. Earthquake rhythms on Earth are not homogeneous. Volcanic activity on Earth is not homogeneous. Solar wind and space weather is not homogeneous. There's solar cycles, right? That's not homogeneous. You get peaks and valleys. Lots of activity right now at the boundary of solar maximum and the descending phase. This is the time period where we've been loaded with energy here on Earth for 3 years now from solar maximum, and this is when things really can get active as a result of that. When you're at the beginning of solar maximum, you haven't had that loading phase get complete. Now the loading phase is done. It's like you're charging your phone, and at the beginning of solar maximum, you're at 50% charge because there is an ascending phase. Now we're at 100% charge. So the things that can happen now can actually happen. And we started to see that because back in July of this year, we had that magnitude 8.8 megaquake, the first magnitude 8 earthquake since August of 2021. And 2020 was a solar minimum. So we had a megaquake at the very end of that solar minimum. We started going to ascending phase, didn't have any megaquakes for 4 years. Now we've had an 8.8. That was the 6th strongest earthquake on record with modern seismological observations. And that was at effectively the beginning of this, right? Now we're really in that phase where the Earth can start expressing these energies that she's been loaded with for a long, long time. So this is what we have coming up. And if we go back here, you will see this other coronal hole. So I mentioned that at the beginning. This one in particular has been the coronal hole that has connected to the Earth with its magnetic field, its high-speed stream, its a negative polarity. This one is as well, both of those being conducive to connecting to the Earth's magnetic field, such that it creates a little bit more geomagnetic instability. That one has been connected with a bunch of high magnitude 7+ earthquakes. So this goes back to the magnitude 8.8 megaquake. That one was the coronal hole that swept by, and then we had that megaquake when we were in the low density, high velocity regime that was following. Actually, what happens is sometimes the velocity will go back down, the solar wind velocity, but the solar wind density remains low. That's often when we see these earthquakes. It's usually solar wind density that's the better indicator than it is the velocity, because it seems that the external environment around the Earth, that plasma environment, seems to influence plate tectonics. Maybe it creates an expansion effect. That's my leading hypothesis for explaining that. There is, though, an energy loading aspect where eventually a fault or a plate boundary will reach a critical stress and then tip over. So these coronal holes seem to have a dual effect of loading energy into the Earth continuously, because they can be very long-lived structures on the sun. This one's been there for months. This one has kind of been on and off, and it's taken on different forms and shapes, but it's been there for months as well. And then there's also this plasma environment Earth geophysics connection that's very poorly understood, and 99% I would say of the mainstream scientists deny that there's some connection to it. They just really don't know what they don't know. We don't know what we don't know, but there's also that angle as well. Now, a little bit more data for you on this. This is really quite interesting. The connection between solar activity and earthquakes doesn't have to be complicated. We see it very clearly here with some very basic data. So you can look at specific things like we just talked about, coronal holes and their high-speed streams and solar wind density and da-da-da-da-da. But you can also look at the most basic of measures and see a pretty clear correlation, at least for this data set. This is earthquakes 1900 to 1999, magnitude 6.5 and greater. So you have the magnitude 7.5s here in black. You have the magnitude 7 or greater there in dark gray, and then you have the magnitude 6.5 or greater in light gray. All right, so these are stacked on top of each other. So if you look at just the 7.5s or the 7s, the correlation isn't really that strong. But if you look at all the earthquakes magnitude 6.5 or greater, the correlation pops out, showing that just in general, broad levels of seismicity, in terms of the frequency of high magnitude earthquakes, is connected to sunspots, because here we have our sunspot numbers. There's other ways of looking at this. Again, this is a very basic measure. You can look at total seismic energy release. That's a very important variable because, again, a magnitude 7.5 earthquake is going to be 32 times more energy than a magnitude 6.5. But if we look at the number of events, we see a clear trend. Here it is. You notice solar cycle 14, 15, 16, kind of weak, all right? Solar cycle 20, also quite weak compared to 17, 18, 19, 21, 22. Look at how earthquake activity ramped up as sunspot numbers ramped up across these solar cycles. Here we have 300, 200, 100, 0. So these are our solar minimums right there. There are solar maximums, these peaks. And you notice that solar cycle 19 was a strong solar cycle. Actually, this was the strongest solar cycle since the late 1700s. So that goes way, way, way back to solar cycle 3. Solar cycle 19 was a beast. That was the end of 1950, beginning of 1960. And look at how we ramped up over this entire time frame, a longer secular variation. This could be like a Gleisberg variation, an 88 to 100 year long variation in solar activity. Look at how earthquake frequency increased, and in general was at its highest in the frequency of these magnitude 6.5 and greater earthquakes, while sunspots overall were highest, showing this energy loading effect over decadal timescales between the sun and the earth. Here's where it really clicks in. Like I saw this, like that is, you can't deny this. It's clear as day. Then solar cycle 20 was weak after solar cycle 19, and look at how the earthquakes dropped off. So we had this big increase of earthquake activity during this big increase in solar activity right here, and then exactly lined up. It's not like that continued on. When this dropped, the sunspot numbers dropped, so did the earthquake activity. And look how the sunspots started to climb up again afterwards with 21, 22, these two being almost perfectly equivalent. And look at how that ramped back up again. So really clear connection. And also notice how here overall earthquake frequency for magnitude 6.5 or greater was higher than it was here, and these solar cycles in terms of sunspot numbers were weaker than these ones. So there's also those comparisons that you could do, and the logic holds, right? This internally all makes sense. So really undeniable data as it relates to the connection between earthquakes and solar activity for 100 years. And this is like one of the most basic measures. So there's more complex connections that we could explore. And so what we could say is that this is a very strong correlation. A lot of people just throw out there, correlation doesn't equal causation, right? But they say that for every single correlation. There are causative relationships, right? There are things that are connected together. It's not like everything is completely random. And you have to look at the system that you're examining. If this was the amount of reruns of Will Ferrell's Elf compared to sunspot numbers, then yeah, obviously it's like a wacky correlation. But we're talking about the sun here. We're talking about the earth here. These are two intimately connected systems within our universe and our cosmos. You turn the sun off. You're God. You flip the switch. The sun goes away, right? Earth becomes cold, dark, lifeless, really quick. And on a geologic time scale, it will shut down. It's not going to be that active geologically once its main source of energy goes away. The sun gives us 1,370 watts per square meter or so, across the entire surface day in, day out, non-stop. We're being blasted with energy from the sun across all the wavelengths. Radio, radio microwave, infrared, near infrared, visible, ultraviolet, extreme ultraviolet, X-ray. I mean, everything that is hitting the Earth is absorbing that, right? Neutrinos pass through the Earth mostly. Some of them absorb in. The sun's emitting a lot of neutrinos, but light radiation, that's getting absorbed, all of it. That's why Venus is so hot. It's closer to the sun, it has a huge atmosphere. It just absorbs all that radiation, all that information too. As you go further out, the planets get colder. Well, what happens? You have a hot planet, it's going to be very active, plate tectonics, and well, you get rhythms in activity. We see with sunspot numbers as they go up and down, that changes the total solar irradiance. And specific wavelengths of light go up like 3 orders of magnitude. Well, that's going to influence the geophysical system. So it's very quite clear. Let us look at these big sunspots on the far side of the sun quickly, because this is pretty wild. So here we have that. And this is always a little bit out of date, this data, because it takes some time to process and then post it. But it's close enough. You know, right now it's the 16th at 10:33 p.m. West Coast of the United States. This is the big sunspot I was mentioning that's soon to rotate into view. So that's a pretty big one. This is the Earth-facing side, so it shows the magnetogram. This is showing helioseismic data, so it's a very low resolution. But when you have these dark blobs, that means big sunspots. And here is the large sunspot that just rotated out of view. Very long train. I think in the next rotation Earth-facing, that one's going to be very active. That's my kind of estimate. And we also see another large sunspot here cutting across. That'll be a little easier to see in the helioseismic data once it's firmly on this side. But we have a lot of big sunspots on the far side of the sun. And as we saw earlier, and we'll look at it again, we just had this huge plasma filament eruption from the northern hemisphere on the far side of the sun. Let's just watch this again, because this is just so epic. Coming up right about here. We want to make sure yeah, that does it. Yeah, coming up right here. So this just occurred, folks. And this is showing just that there's a lot of power and energy that was built up, now releasing. And that, affects the entire solar system in some aspects. Because you can think about the neutrinos that are being created from this, the light radiation. It's not just the plasma filament itself. There's other aspects to this as well. So we are in solar maximum at the very beginning of the descending phase. This is not solar minimum. So just in general, this entire time frame is very active. Is very, very active. That is effectively the update. I just want to show you one more thing before we move on. I want to show you this planetary alignment. I've been talking about this, but just to give you a glimpse going forward, this is kind of what you need to know. Because we are right now in this earthquake watch as a result of that transequatorial coronal hole, and then we'll be in another earthquake watch with this one. And yeah, I want to repeat, the world is not ending. Thank you, Secret Owl, our moderator here, for saying that. I'm not about that on the channel. We're just exploring and forecasting what is likely to occur. But I've never said once that the world is going to end. If there is something that comes in like that, I'll tell you, but we don't have any evidence that the world is going to end anytime soon. These are all normal things on the geologic time scale, and we're doing our best to understand the connection between solar activity, the planets, space weather, the cosmic environment, and more. And because it's just such a new thing for so many people, it can be a little fearful at times. You're usually fearful of what you don't know. And also the popular media, right, Discovery and History Channel, for years, anytime they aired a space program, is always, the top 10 cosmic ways the Earth could get incinerated or something like that. So they never really showed it from a more kind of balanced, nuanced, just educational perspective. So if we go back here, here's the planetary alignment that's forming right now. Remember how I mentioned Venus and Mars on the opposite side of the sun, the far side, right? If we go forward in time right here, you'll see that we get this conjunction between them early January. January 7th is the day that they really go nicely conjunct. Watch when I flip around. There is Jupiter. We have a Jupiter opposition on the 10th, and Earth's closest approach to the sun, its annual perihelion, is on January 3rd. So a lot of factors are converging together at this moment in time. We often see powerful energetic events during very notable planetary alignments like this one. So we have this planetary alignment coming up beginning of January. We had a ton of anomalous earthquake activity off the coast of Japan, which is indicating a much higher risk for a magnitude 8+ megaquake. I even think it could be a magnitude 9+. I don't want it to be that, but the foreshock activity, if it is foreshock activity, would indicate that it's a big earthquake that could strike Japan. And if we go back here to our sun, we have this coronal hole loading the Earth with energy right now, but this is the one that loaded the Earth and then struck, was basically connected to the Earth with its magnetic field. It was geoeffective during the magnitude 8.8 megaquake, also with one of its aftershocks, which was a magnitude 7. Just with the recent magnitude 7.6 in Japan, it was this one right there. Also, we had a magnitude 7 in South America connected in time with this. Almost all the earthquakes of the past 5 months, of big earthquakes, have been connected to that specific coronal hole. It's really quite striking. I can show you one more graphic here to really show you that periodicity before we sign off. So we're going to look at our global seismic activity level as provided by Volcano Discovery. And we'll move over here. Here we have our data. Right now, activity is moderate. Here's the most recent seismic burst that occurred. Again, we see that 7.6, our magnitude 7 in Alaska. Aftershocks for Japan. You see this right here is our 6.4 and 6.8 magnitude earthquakes in Japan. And then we see this regular rhythmic cycle like this. Here's that magnitude 8.8 megaquake. Notice the periodicity on this. This is basically 28 days in between each one. There's a little bit of variability, right? You know, nature's not exactly perfect, but in general, the strongest earthquakes have had a 28-day periodicity in between them. That's the lunar periodicity. That's also the solar rotation period. So what we have coming up is a new moon on the 19th. We'll have a full moon pretty soon afterwards with that alignment. So that alignment with Mars, Venus, Jupiter, all that, we're going to have a full moon around that time, roughly. But more importantly, we're going to have that coronal hole sweep by us again as that planetary alignment clicks into place. Big sunspots will be on the Earth-facing side. Just in general, sunspots release more energy, charging up the Earth global electric circuit. The Earth is going to be more energized as a result. It's the perfect, and we've had all the foreshock activity in Japan. It's the perfect setup for something big to happen. I hope it's not the case. We don't want it to be the case, but we're looking at things very just openly and honestly from all the different perspectives. And well, it looks like something big is coming. At least it's good to be aware of this, and it's good to be prepared. Aware and prepared, you know, that's the be prepared is a scout motto. So that is something, I think it's us recognizing these trends on the planet and then actually being able to make fairly accurate earthquake forecasts at a global scale shows that we're coming to a deeper understanding of the planet that we live on, of Earth herself, our connection to her, and more. So it's a really good thing that we're putting these puzzle pieces together, because we don't want to be living in ignorance for forever. You know, Homo sapiens, we have this consciousness, intelligence, evolution journey that we are on. And I don't think it's about robots or AI. I think it's about us actually understanding our place in the universe and our connection to the cosmos. So we are making some strides there in recognizing the connection between solar activity, earthquakes, and more. That is an important piece of this puzzle. And if we go back here, it's interesting that you go to the USGS website, they'll say there's no connection between solar activity and earthquakes, yet this is the most basic data that you can basically show, and it highlights that connection very clearly as I described. If you look at earthquakes magnitude 6.5 or greater and their frequency of events every year, it's perfectly correlated with changes in sunspot numbers, with more earthquakes during solar cycles with higher sunspot numbers. And this is over decadal time scales. So like at some point, what are they trying to hide? Or like, are they just really that clueless? Like, what is the deal here? Because this is very basic data and it shows it beyond a shadow of a doubt. Like, I mean, it's so obvious. So is there like some purposeful reason to not acknowledge this connection? I don't know. I just think it's very, very odd, and I'm here to do my best to educate others on what actually is happening on the planet, because I think that's really important. It's our duty to understand what's happening here on the planet. So to sign off, just going to let you know that we have a sale happening right now on the Earth Evolution store. So this is www.earthevolution.com/store. There's a link in the video description. 5% off everything till the end of the month using the code THANKSSTEFAN. That's all one word, THANKSSTEFAN. And you see all the products that we have listed here. We have merchandise, for example, the Interstellar 3i Atlas long sleeve, the Cosmos Within t-shirt, the Boom Shakalaka merch, all organic, holistic wellness tea blends that my dad and I mix and make and offer to people. This was originally my thing. I had him start to help out, brought him on board, but this isn't something that we're just reselling and making money off of. Like, we're buying these herbs from the best suppliers, biodynamic growers on the island of Kauai and in Washington State, and doing very special formulations. Really the absolute best stuff you can buy at the grocery store. If you buy a tea blend like this to help you sleep or to calm down, which is what Tranquility does, they're just going to give you the dust at the bottom of a bin, because they're all about profit margins and more. But we're giving you really good, high quality herbs here: chamomile, lavender, calendula flower, lemongrass, dandelion root, like some of nature's most healing herbs. Absolutely fantastic for you. We have also t-shirts, my children's book, Go On Good Turtle, my ebook on gut health, the Holistic Gut Health Guide, some artwork from my father, printed on white rolled canvas, and more. Tons of stuff. Check it out. 5% off everything till the end of the year. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm wishing each and every single one of you well. Again, I've been your host, Stefan Burns, and I'll keep you up to date with everything that's happening here on Earth energetically. So make sure you please subscribe. We cover effectively everything that we talked about today: earthquakes, volcanoes, what's happening here on Earth, geomagnetic storms, weather events, but also solar activity, space weather, planetary resonances, interstellar forces, and cosmic events, and more. So if you like the sound of that, hope to see you around. Thank you all so much. Have a great night or day wherever you are, and I'll see you all very, very soon.